Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining my talk today. Can't really hear any applause, but I'm going to assume there is some somewhere out there. Just wanted to say firstly, a big apology for all the swear words you might see in my presentation. I get really nervous with public speaking, so the curses make me feel more confident, like a sailor or something. So I hope you don't mind, and I hope it doesn't distract from the content itself. Let me just hit this. Cool. So before we get started, if you haven't already, can you go vote in the little poll on Swapcard? I'm guessing you're seeing it in Swapcard, so I don't need the little link I put in here. I've got two polls in there. Just kind of, it'll be really interesting to get the answers to those for fuck ups number 3 and 4 when we get to that a bit later in the presentation. So quick intros. My name is Sim. I've been working in startups for about 8 years in New Zealand and the UK. Right now, I'm heading up product marketing at Muzzmatch, but if you know startups, you know that you probably have 10 different hats, and one of the hats I wear quite regularly is in user acquisition. So Muzzmatch is the world's biggest dating and marriage app for Muslims. I think it's also the best, but I'm quite biased. We've got about 4 million members worldwide, and we've helped 100,000 or so marriages happen. Right now, we have a team of about 50 people, mostly from London. So I'm going to be talking about fuck ups in a year that was quite full of them and historically large ones, I guess. But I'm being a bit cheeky because 2020 was actually pretty great for dating apps in general. All the traditional methods for finding new partners, they shut down. It was hard to find them offline, so people flocked to the apps. And the numbers were so good, companies like Bumble, who we look up to a lot, rode that wave all the way to like a very successful IPO at the start of this year. And we benefit from the trends as well. So a couple of quick snapshots into the global dating market scene, thanks to App Annie. I think there's some App Annie people in the crowd today as well. Now, I can't share our exact performance details, but I can show you some public data that we have on some of the mainstream leaders and a column full of thumbs up showing where we're doing a little bit better than them right now. So that's quite exciting for us. So when I'm talking about fuck ups in this sense, I'm not talking about like business ending things, more like things we could have picked up earlier, could have picked up quicker, and would have helped us achieve a much higher, get to a better place last year. Some of this might be useful to you as lessons for things to avoid, or more for a thinking exercise. And especially the last two, I think, will be more like a thinking exercise for everybody. But before we get really into it, I've got two quick plugs. If you're a app marketer, go to muzzmatch.com or dev, go to muzzmatch.com/careers. And if you're single and Muslim, just download the app and get married. So fuck up number 1, it's an easy one. If you're not doing this right now, just start it. Dynamic language optimization on Facebook. So this is the option in Facebook ads to display content dynamically to your viewers or your audience based on the language on their device. The idea being that you can target people with the languages that they're more likely to respond to. Increase volume, decrease CAC. So Muzzmatch is available in almost every country, and we translated the app to 14 languages. But until 2019, we were only running English-speaking ads in the UK and the US. And there was a brief stint in France, but it's not really worth counting that. So in 2020, when we expanded to Commonwealth countries, Western Europe, and Singapore, we thought we were doing pretty well just by having those primary languages from those countries. We just didn't have the resources at the time to translate to the secondary languages. And an example of that might be for instance, in Canada, where you have the Quebec province, and there's where they speak French, and there's several million people there who we're just not getting to because our ads weren't targeted towards them. So towards the second half of the year, we brought in more people, we got more resources, we had more time to make this happen. And it wasn't exactly instantaneous, the kind of effect that this had just by turning something on that we hadn't really looked into, but it was nearly there. Germany is a particularly strong DLO country for us. Germany has a lot of recent immigration from Muslim countries, first generation Germans who are also Muslims. So we looked at the ethnic makeup of the country through census data, found out where their top immigration populations were from, and saw that that was Turkish and Arabic speakers. So we added those into our dynamic language optimization ads. And yeah, this is the effect that it had quite quickly afterwards. For us, it wasn't actually that much extra work on top of things. We were already creating Turkish and Arabic ads for some other tests that we were running, and the app itself was already translated for those languages. So this was just us picking up money that we were definitely leaving on the table. Now, a bit of advice I can give to you is not to get too scared, not to get scared too quickly if the results don't pick up right away. I know some of you might be working in a quite agile way where you run tests every week and you try to learn from it that quickly. Some of the stuff you might need to let run for longer. So for us, we saw in almost every country that we launched quite a high uptick in the CAC, or in, like the CAC didn't change in some countries, or in the case of like France, there was quite a high uptick. But eventually the volume increases should kick in, and then it will even out. I don't know why this graph is quite so squished, but we had a 20% decrease in CAC in France by adding in Arabic, just by adding in one extra language into the mix. So I've got some caveats for this, of course. I'm guessing if you're not as interested in immigrant populations for your app, this won't work as well for you. And also, once iOS 14 kicks in, this is almost all out the door for at least the Apple side of the business. You just won't be able to run that many languages this way, with the reduction to like 9 campaigns and 5 ad sets within each. So that's just something that we've benefited from in the last few months, but it won't be as useful to us going forward. So F-up number 2, this one we're still kind of working our way through. I won't name names in which particular ad network I'm talking about, but maybe you can figure it out by context clues in here. But either way, it's kind of best practice that you approach all of your ad networks with some level of scrutiny, and maybe add some of these things that I'll talk about towards the end into your daily, weekly, monthly kind of workflow. So Q2 last year, we started noticing something quite strange with our signups that we're getting from this one particular campaign. It was an Android campaign that we're running in the US, and it was the highest spend campaign that we had on that network, and one of the highest that we had all together. And the CAC was affordable, but it was cheaper than a lot of the other comparable ones, but the ROAS for it, the return from our customers and revenue later down the funnel, was just terrible in comparison. So we started looking at comparing it to the iOS campaigns. We saw the iOS was actually also pretty poor for just this one country and just this one network. And then we started digging into our own CRM to see that almost a whopping 60% were coming from outside of the US, and we were paying for that. Effectively, it was just very expensive gumming up our numbers, and gave us a very false sense of how our business was actually doing in the US. So this particular ad, the way we kind of went through troubleshooting this was we looked at the exclusions and inclusions. Obviously, that's the first place you start. This particular ad network doesn't give you the ability to 100% guarantee who you're getting to. It kind of has a bit of a vague functionality for the geolocation side of the things. It won't guarantee it. So we were very conservative. We added every country in our top blacklist countries into the exclusion list, and we went so far as to just include state by state, and it still didn't work. We doubled down and checked our own attribution systems. We compared phone numbers, IP addresses, lat long data, and our side held up. So even after escalating, it didn't quite turn out to be, we didn't get an answer that was really actually very useful to us from the ad network. In the end, what we did was we started moving the events down the funnel, and this is actually something that we should have been doing anyway, or at least at the stage that we found this out. It should be something we should be applying across our campaigns, going from just paying for installs to paying for more for revenue conversion signal. But an app like ours, which is a social app there are some other elements to conversions than just paying for pure revenue. We need to kind of maintain the health of the ecosystem, bring in certain number of users, refresh the MAUs. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next couple of slides, but we can't just quite move everything over to TROS and solve everything. So I guess the learning part of this fuck up was you shouldn't trust anything, be very cynical. One thing that we set up right away is a new dashboard in Metabase, which is our BI tool, which whenever a campaign goes below a certain threshold for comparing the number of signups to our own geodata, we get an alert so we can dig into it and make sure that we don't repeat this again. And I guess my advice would be just to be more proactive with how you are monitoring your ad networks using tools like Branch, which is our MMP, or your own internal dashboarding tools. All of those things will really help here. All right, I'm kind of whizzing through this. I talk very fast as more and more I get nervous, so hope that's okay. Okay, so the next two F-ups is a little bit more existential in nature. It's more like, how do you know you're doing the right, you're following the right metric or the right KPI as you're going through the business and as you're in different stages of a startup. I'm just going to pop up a little poem I wrote while I look at the answers from the first poll. Please feel free to read it and judge. So the question for the first poll was, what is your performance marketing North Star? We had about 39 votes, so thanks for everyone who voted. So 23% of you said cost per install is your North Star metric. 31% said ROAS, return on ad spend. 23% said monthly active users. 18% said cost per sign up, and then 5% with other. So for us, so I have this theory, well, I don't think it's quite a theory, more like just an observation, that the KPI that you pick in the acquisition part of the funnel steers everything else down funnel and in the business. So if you pick a KPI that's based on just CAC, everything around the business is going to be steering towards you just getting cheaper and cheaper customers. If you pick something to do with revenue, you start molding the decisions that are being made in the product team to be about revenue generation. We are somewhere in between revenue and this holistic view, which is kind of looking at the bigger picture, not just short-term revenue gains, but how can we build an app that brings value to the users, so it kind of the users will bring other users back, and that we can still maintain a healthy level of revenue without just churning people out. Now, when I first started in 2019, our goal was just purely a vanity metric. It was just to get to 2 million users. It wasn't a great strategy behind it. It's just we thought 2 million users, that's a great number. Let's go hit that. And we did everything we could to bring the CAC down, and while we're trying to get to that number. So after that, it was just purely on CAC. And the problem we had there was when you start looking at just CAC, you start bringing in customers who might not be as good for the ecosystem or the health of your app. You bring in maybe people from countries or areas that will just kind of gum up your machine, but won't actually engage, won't actually build the social network that you need for an app like ours. So we're in this place where we're now kind of looking at a view to kind of make sure that we have a balance there. So our amazing data science team, they've created a model where basically it hinges on us getting a certain level number of women onto the platform, and then beyond that, it then prioritizes cheaper signups. So the idea is if we're at least maintaining the organic ratio for women joining the app in that country, everything after that, we can just go towards just filling in bodies into the app. And it's been working pretty well for us. The idea, we've seen going forward that like quite a bit of our retention numbers have improved just by putting this in. And I think that's something that we need to test a bit more, but it's showing good success for where we are in the business. So, yep. takeaway from this, you pick your metrics, but it will steer you. The last little section, this one I might need to zip through because the timing isn't quite great, but I'm actually not a performance marketing specialist. So this section is something that I've just been thinking about a lot, even just outside of work, because are we just paying a lot of money to these big ad networks, and are we actually getting the value that we think we're getting from them? It's a question that always comes up in my mind. I'll talk to you about a particular brand that's also having this existential crisis very shortly. But first, another poll and another poem. So the poll question was, how important is performance marketing to your growth plans in 2021? 55% of you said performance marketing is the majority of our growth or budget focus. 30% said performance marketing is important, but we're exploring other areas, for example, brand. 14% said you're transitioning away from performance altogether. And then 2%, two very brave percent of you said performance marketing is dead. So why this popped up in my head recently is because of this article that I read recently from the CEO of Airbnb. Last year, Airbnb cut their entire marketing spend from about 600 million down to 100 million. And the majority of that cut was in performance marketing. They kept about 100 million. They kept a small portion of that for some sponsorships and things that they had. And the quote that's really haunted me in this past month is this one from their CEO, Brian Chesky. What the pandemic showed was that we can take marketing down to zero and still have 95% of the same traffic. Now, I've had this inkling before, which is at what point do you saturate your market with the performance side that you can then move on to more branding work and building that out rather than paying for installs from people who might not actually be ready to use your app. And for us, it's really important because we're showing our apps to all these 18 to 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds who might not be actually wanting to get married in that point when we're showing that ad. So it's a lot of room for wastage there. Now, you're probably thinking something very obvious here, which is your brand, or Muzzmatch, my brand, is not Airbnb. We don't have that huge clout to throw around with our brand. This might be something that only a large brand like Airbnb could actually do. But we actually thought maybe we'd try to test that out. So last year we did. We knew that the LTV of our organic users is almost 50% more than the LTV of our non-organic users. So we just wanted to see what would happen if we tried this for a month. So we dropped our spending in performance in the UK for about a month, except for some defense bids that we had up on Google and Apple search ads. And in that month, we dropped our daily average revenue by about 12%. But if you normalize that for some other experiments that we were running at the time, it only dropped by about 15%. The overall signups dropped by 10%, but it bounced back almost immediately the next month, and we didn't pick up the performance marketing spend to that same level again. So we went from about 80% organic to 90% organic and saved ourselves a lot of money without a lot of pain. Now, we've done this, but we haven't actually applied this everywhere, and we haven't even actually quite applied this very evenly in the UK itself. And the reasons for that is, well, we haven't actually cracked the brand part of the problem. We're in growth mode, so saving money for the sake of saving money does nothing for us. We need to find a good way to spend that money effectively that we saved. So what we haven't quite figured out from this picture is how do we spend that money that we are saving or being more effective with on our performance side into the brand side. And that's probably something that we'll be exploring and experimenting with the next year. And that's actually quite exciting. So if you also find that exciting, you might want to join the team. So yeah, a quick summary. If you're not doing DLO, do DLO. If you're not being cynical and scrutinizing your ad networks, start doing that now. Have some alerts in place, because at some point that black box will bite you. Figuring out what when you're measuring success, remember that you're also deciding the direction of your business. And lastly, is performance marketing even something that you should be doing? Probably it is if you're still small, but you have to understand when it is a good time to make that transition away from just pure performance to more brand work. So that's me. I'll hand it over for questions if there were any from the audience or from James.
Well, I think, yeah, if anyone's got any questions, what I suggest is that maybe you want to stop sharing your slide now, Sim. And,
yep, sure.
Yeah, I think if anyone's got any questions, please leave them in the chat. Maybe, Sim, you can head on there after this and dive in and answer any. I really like that talk. I thought it's great that you included some poetry. We've never had that before. We've had getting people to do exercises at the live event one year from Runtastic. We've never had poetry, so that was great. And yeah, I love the mix of the really tactical stuff as well as, you know, sort of the thinking about the brand. So that was brilliant. So yeah, if anyone's got any specific questions, then maybe you can drop them now in the Q&A, and someone will pick them up then. I suppose just for me, sort of closing, you know, what you've you know, you've dealt with the challenges of the last year really well, and I can see we're getting a lot of good feedback in the chat here.
Yeah, I've been looking at the questions channel, which is empty. The chat is going off.
Oh, here we go. So there's a few in there. So I assume we'll go in and take them. But yeah, what you got planned for the year ahead then?
So the big things for this year ahead, we have, I don't know if you remember the little slide with the countries that we were in. That's very Eurocentric right now. And we're a Muslim dating app, right? We haven't even really hit any of the Muslim majority countries yet. The main reason for that, we don't understand that market well enough. And we're doing these little experiments to make sure we're going in there in a very respectful way, and then also effective ways. And we need to like tweak our pricing, tweak our payment mechanism. So that's probably a big one. And the next thing is the brand side. Like, we're very saturated in the UK, but the US is huge. It's very open to a lot of opportunities. So we're looking for ways to like make a lot of inroads in the US and become more than just this app from the UK to them.
Okay, so big things coming from Muzmatch in 2021, and thanks for sharing your insights today. Really appreciate it. Great. And yeah, I can see there's a couple of questions, so yeah, if you dive into the chat.
I will stay here for the next however long and answer all these questions.
Right. All right. Thanks, Sim. That's brilliant.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.